You don't realize you're holding the worst possible weapon until it's already too late. The moment you lift it, you feel strangely confident, almost proud, as if you finally found something that will keep you alive. But then the first zombie lunges at you, and within a split second, reality tears that illusion apart. Your swing is too light, too slow, too weak, or worse, it simply doesn't do anything at all. And in that single heartbeat, you understand the truth. You didn't pick a weapon. You picked your own downfall. You feel the cold rising up your spine as you take a step back, realizing that survival in a zombie apocalypse isn't about bravery, strength, or even speed. It's about precision. It's about physics. It's about understanding how the human body, and an undead one, actually works. Every choice you make becomes a calculation, a risk assessment, a matter of life or death. And the weapon in your hand? It is supposed to be your final line of defense. But what if the thing you trusted the most is the thing that will get you killed faster than the zombies themselves? Imagine the air thick with the smell of decay, your heartbeat pounding inside your skull, and your hand gripping a tool that feels wrong the more you think about it. You can sense it already. The weight distribution is terrible. The reach is short. The force is weak, or the noise it makes is enough to summon every roaming corpse within 100 meters. This isn't just ineffective. It's a liability, a trap, a false promise crafted by panic and desperation. As you stand there staring at the approaching silhouettes, you finally understand the terrifying truth. Some weapons don't help you survive. They only help you die slower. And tonight, you will discover exactly which weapons those are, why they fail, and how easily they can turn your final stand into your final mistake. You tighten your grip on the handle, trying to convince yourself that the small blade in your hand is enough. It feels sharp. It feels familiar. It feels safe. But that feeling is nothing more than a comforting lie your mind tells you in moments of panic. Because when you're facing something that doesn't feel pain, doesn't hesitate, and doesn't stop unless you destroy its brain, a light weapon is the fastest way to get yourself killed. A kitchen knife, a fruit knife, even a camping knife. They all look lethal in your imagination. You picture yourself slicing through rotting flesh, carving a path to safety. But the reality is bitterly different. These blades are designed for soft tissue, not bone. And a zombie's skull, even in a decayed state, still protects the brain like a helmet made of reinforced calcium. When you stab, the blade hits bone and stops. When you slash, it tears dead flesh, but does nothing to the brain. And every second you spend struggling with a zombie that should already be down is another second closer to infection, exhaustion, or death. Worse, these weapons force you into the most dangerous position imaginable: close range. You need to be so close that you can smell the rot on its breath, feel its hands clawing toward your face, its teeth snapping inches from your skin. That's when your knife becomes dead weight. You're no longer fighting with a weapon. You're wrestling with a corpse that doesn't get tired, doesn't lose strength, and doesn't care how deep your blade goes unless it reaches the one place you can barely get to: the brain. And the worst part? The knife can get stuck. Once lodged between bone plates or tangled in dried muscle, you're left pulling and yanking while a second or third zombie closes in. Your fingers slip. Your breathing falters. And for the first time, you realize that the weapon you trusted is nothing but a thin piece of metal that can't deliver the force you need, no matter how desperately you swing. In a real apocalypse, light weapons do more than fail you. They betray you. They drain your energy, force you into lethal proximity, and give you a false sense of control in a world where control is the first thing you lose. You might think that if small, lightweight weapons fail because they lack power, then going bigger, heavier, stronger is the answer. A massive sledgehammer, a broad axe, a steel maul heavy enough to break concrete. In theory, these sound like the ultimate skull-crushing tools. In your imagination, you picture a single, devastating swing sending a zombie's head exploding like overripe fruit. But that fantasy collapses the moment you try to actually use one. Because the truth hits you the second you lift a weapon like that. It's too heavy. Not just a bit tiring, heavy. Life-ending heavy. Every swing demands your full strength, your full focus, and drains your energy faster than fear can replenish it. You feel the weight dragging against your muscles, your grip slipping with sweat, your breath burning in your lungs after just 2 or 3 strikes. A weapon that exhausts you after seconds is not a weapon. It's dead weight, designed to turn you into prey. The danger doesn't stop there. Heavy weapons aren't just exhausting, they're slow. Every downward arc feels like time dilating, stretching, revealing just how vulnerable you truly are. Zombies don't wait for you to recover your stance. They don't pause while you drag the weapon back into position. They close in relentlessly, turning your moment of recovery into their moment of attack. If you miss, if you hit the wrong angle, if the skull doesn't break on the first impact, you're done. You won't have time for a second attempt before the nearest zombie is already on top of you. And then comes a hidden nightmare. The weapon gets stuck. A sledgehammer or axe that embeds too deeply doesn't come out cleanly. The blade wedges into bone. The hammer sinks into the skull. You're left twisting, yanking, trying to free it while your arms shake from fatigue. The zombie's body collapses, dragging the weapon with it, pulling you off balance while another corpse shuffles toward you from behind. You don't just lose your weapon, you lose your stance, your awareness, your chance to escape. These tools are powerful in the hands of trained athletes, soldiers, or firefighters, but in a chaotic, adrenaline-fueled panic, power becomes a trap. A heavy weapon demands perfect timing, perfect accuracy, perfect stamina, 3 things no average survivor can maintain in a world where every mistake is fatal. What you thought would be your strongest swing becomes the reason you can't swing again. At first glance, a firearm feels like the ultimate equalizer. You point, you pull the trigger, and the threat disappears. That's the fantasy most people carry into the apocalypse. An illusion shaped by movies where a single bullet drops anything, dead or undead. But once you're actually out there, surrounded by moving bodies and echoing moans, you discover the ugly truth. The wrong gun is worse than having no gun at all. And most people grab the wrong gun. Small caliber pistols, the kind that fit neatly in your hand, the kind you assume are easy to use, are nothing but noise machines disguised as weapons. Their bullets lack the velocity to pierce the skull consistently. They bounce off thick bone, ricochet under the skin, or lodge uselessly in muscle. You can unload half a magazine into a zombie's torso and accomplish nothing except wasting precious ammo. Even headshots aren't guaranteed when the bullet simply doesn't have the stopping power to punch through the cranial bone. You hear the shot, you see the hit, but the zombie keeps coming. And your stomach drops as you realize you just told every undead creature within hearing range exactly where you are. That sound, sharp, cracking, impossible to hide, becomes your real enemy. The moment it echoes across the empty streets, you can feel the world wake up. Shadows shift. Footsteps multiply, moans ripple like waves. A single gunshot doesn't solve your problem. It multiplies it. Suddenly, the one zombie you were trying to deal with becomes 10, maybe 20, all slowly converging toward the source of the noise. You. Worse, small firearms give you a false sense of distance. You tell yourself you don't need to get close, but when your aim shakes, when the target moves unpredictably, when adrenaline makes your hands tremble, you realize how hard it is to land clean headshots under pressure. You fire again and again, missing by inches, burning through your limited ammo until you hear the worst sound in the apocalypse, the empty click of a dry chamber. And now you're standing there holding a useless piece of metal that weighs you down as the undead keep advancing. The barrel is overheated, your ears are ringing, and your heart is pounding too loud for you to think clearly. You relied on a weapon that promised safety from a distance, but delivered nothing but noise, attention, and panic. In the end, a weak gun doesn't protect you from zombies. It only announces your location, wastes your resources, and leaves you helpless at the exact moment you need strength the most. You've seen them in survival forums, in amateur apocalypse fantasies, in backyard demonstrations filmed on shaky cameras, improvised melee weapons that look brutal, creative, even genius at first glance. A pipe wrapped in barbed wire, a wooden bat studded with nails, a metal rod with a saw blade taped to one end. These creations look fierce enough to scare someone in a video, but in a real zombie apocalypse, they're nothing but traps disguised as ingenuity. You can feel the deception the moment you actually hold one. The weight distribution is wrong. The balance is off. Every swing feels unpredictable, wobbling in your hand as if the weapon is fighting against you. You try to line up a strike, but the added attachments shift the center of mass, forcing your wrist to compensate. It doesn't feel like a weapon built for combat. It feels like a construction accident begging to happen. Then comes the real danger: snagging. Every nail, hook, barb, or jagged metal piece is a magnet for trouble. You sink the weapon into a zombie's head and immediately feel it catch, on skull fragments, on hair, on torn skin. Instead of pulling back smoothly for another swing, you're stuck wrestling your weapon free while the corpse drags it downward. Your momentum dies, your stance breaks, and suddenly you've turned a one-zombie encounter into a slow-motion disaster. Even worse, these improvised weapons are fragile. A pipe bursts at the welded seam. A nail bends on impact. A taped-on saw blade flies off mid-swing. Wood splits under repeated force. You're not holding a durable survival tool. You're holding a collection of weak points waiting to fail at the worst possible moment. And when a weapon fails during combat, it doesn't just become ineffective. It becomes dangerous to you. Fragments break loose. Sharp edges shift unpredictably. Your own weapon becomes a source of accidental cuts, punctures, or infections, all of which can be fatal in a world where medical supplies are nearly non-existent. But the most deceptive danger is psychological. These DIY weapons make you feel powerful. They make you feel inventive, capable, special, like the kind of survivor who doesn't need real gear because you can make your own. It's a fantasy fueled by adrenaline and overconfidence. And that's exactly what gets people killed. Because in reality, improvised weapons aren't cool. They're inconsistent. They're inefficient. They require too much maintenance, too much force, too much luck. And when faced with something relentless and unthinking, the last thing you should rely on is a weapon that only works in ideal conditions. The truth is simple. The more complicated a weapon looks, the more likely it is to fail. And in an apocalypse, failure is just another word for death. At first, the idea of keeping your distance feels like the smartest possible strategy. After all, if zombies are most dangerous up close, then a long-range weapon should be the perfect solution. No risk of bites, no grappling, no sudden hands clawing at your throat. So you reach for something that promises distance. Maybe a homemade bow, a slingshot, a set of throwing knives, or even a cheap crossbow you bought online long before the world fell apart. It feels clever. It feels tactical. But in a real undead scenario, these weapons betray you faster than you can knock your second shot. Because the truth is painfully simple. Long-range weapons only work if they deliver real stopping power. And most amateur, improvised, or low-tension weapons don't. A makeshift bow lacks draw strength. Its arrows wobble, drift, or tumble in the air. A slingshot relies on perfect aim and perfect tension, two things you lose the moment your hands start shaking from fear. Throwing knives? They're practically a joke, lightweight, unstable, requiring training most people don't have. Even if you hit a zombie in the head, the blade often fails to penetrate the bone. All you accomplish is alerting the undead with a glancing strike while your weapon clatters uselessly to the ground. Then comes the ugly reality. Accuracy under pressure is nothing like aiming in practice. In training, the target doesn't move. It doesn't sway. It doesn't rush forward with unpredictable momentum. But zombies do. Their bodies jerk, stagger, lunge in strange rhythms. They don't move like living humans. They don't stand still. They don't give you the clean shot you've rehearsed 100 times in a calm, controlled environment. Suddenly, your perfect technique collapses into desperate guesswork. And when you miss, and you will miss, you pay with time you don't have. Reloading a crossbow takes precious seconds. Restringing a loosened bowstring takes longer. Recovering thrown weapons? Impossible. They fly off into bushes, through fences, onto rooftops, or into the swarm itself. Every shot you take diminishes your arsenal, and every second spent reloading drags you closer to being overrun. But the worst part is the false sense of security. You think distance equals safety, so you let your guard down. You focus on lining up your next shot instead of listening for the shuffling behind you. You tell yourself you're far enough away, right up until the moment a zombie you never noticed grabs your shoulder from the side. That's the danger of weak, long-range weapons. They don't just fail to stop zombies, they make you believe you're safe when you aren't. In an apocalypse, a weapon that depends on perfect aim, perfect conditions, and perfect timing is not a weapon. It's a gamble. And gamblers don't last long when the dead are the ones collecting the debt. Fire has always fascinated survivors. It feels powerful, intimidating, dramatic, something that can wipe out entire threats with a single burst of flame. So when panic hits, you might reach for a blowtorch, a can of aerosol paired with a lighter, a Molotov cocktail, or any improvised fire-based weapon that promises instant devastation. At first it seems brilliant. Fire is one of humanity's earliest tools of survival. Surely in a zombie apocalypse, it must be one of the strongest. But the moment you pull the trigger or strike the match, you learn a horrifying truth. Fire is not your ally. It's the most unpredictable enemy you can unleash on yourself. The failure begins with the simplest misconception. Fire does not stop a zombie immediately. A burning corpse keeps moving. It keeps walking. It keeps reaching for you with melting hands, its skin peeling and dripping as it burns. And now, instead of a regular undead threat, you're facing a creature turned into a flaming, moving hazard. Every attempt to dodge becomes a risk of being touched by burning flesh. Every misstep becomes a chance to set yourself on fire. You don't create distance, you create chaos. Then comes the problem of control. A Molotov bottle doesn't break where you think it will. The flames spread unpredictably, licking across floors, walls, grass, fabrics, anything combustible. A single spark drifting in the wind can turn your escape route into an inferno. And the smoke, thick, choking, toxic, makes it harder to breathe, harder to see, harder to stay calm. The more fire you unleash, the more you trap yourself inside the disaster you created. Weapons like aerosol flamethrowers or handheld torches feel safer because they're contained, but they drag you into an even deadlier trap: the need to stand close. You're forced within lunging distance of the zombie to actually hit it with the flame. And when that creature catches fire, it doesn't stagger away. It lunges forward, driven by instinct, by momentum, by hunger. The heat sears your skin. Your clothes grow dangerously warm. One mistake, one stumble, and you're engulfed. And fuel, your supposed advantage, becomes your weakness. Every fire-based weapon relies on finite resources: gas, oil, aerosol, alcohol. These run out fast, too fast. You waste precious survival supplies in exchange for a weapon that barely slows down the undead. Worse, the bright flash of fire in the dark acts like a beacon. The smell of smoke drifts for kilometers. The crackling roar of flames travels through empty streets. Zombies don't fear fire. They follow sound and movement. And fire creates both. The real danger is simple. Fire doesn't eliminate threats. It multiplies them. It spreads. It blinds. It chokes. It attracts. It turns predictable zombie encounters into burning, uncontrolled catastrophes. And in the moment you stand there watching a flaming corpse crawl toward you, you finally understand. Some weapons don't just fail. They turn the entire world against you. There's a moment, right before you pick up a weapon, when your instincts take over. Your pulse spikes, your breath sharpens, and your mind floods with images from every action movie, game, or survival story you've ever seen. You're not thinking logically. You're not thinking strategically. You're thinking emotionally. And in a zombie apocalypse, emotion is the most dangerous advisor you can have. You don't choose the weapon that works. You choose the weapon that feels right. The one that looks powerful in your hands. The one that makes you feel like a survivor, a warrior, a hero. Maybe it's the katana you bought online after binge-watching your favorite series. Maybe it's the oversized axe from a camping store that looked badass. Maybe it's a giant crowbar, a fantasy sword replica, or a weapon you once saw a character wield flawlessly on screen. For a moment, holding it makes you believe you're prepared. But preparation isn't about confidence. It's about compatibility. And the weapon you choose under emotional pressure is almost always the one you're least capable of using. The problem starts with expectation. Movies teach you that complex weapons are easy, that katanas slice through skulls like butter, that giant axes swing effortlessly, that exotic blades make you unstoppable. But reality is heavier, messier, slower. A katana chips or bends on bone. A decorative sword shatters on first impact. A large axe drags your shoulders down and steals your stamina with every swing. These weapons weren't made for prolonged chaos. They were made for trained hands, or worse, for display shelves. Then comes the mental trap. You overestimate your abilities. You think adrenaline will make you stronger. You think fear will sharpen your aim. You think instinct will guide your strikes. But adrenaline steals precision. Fear makes you clumsy. Instinct pushes you to swing wildly when you should be calculating. And every misstep with a poorly chosen weapon increases the danger exponentially. You don't just fail to kill the zombie. You lose balance. You stumble. You drop your weapon. You panic. The chaos inside you becomes deadlier than the creature in front of you. But the worst part isn't physical. It's psychological. When you choose a weapon based on emotion, you attach your survival to a fantasy. You believe you're safe because the weapon feels right, and that false confidence blinds you to the reality unfolding around you. You stop paying attention to your surroundings. You fail to notice the zombie approaching from the corner of your vision. You underestimate the number of enemies closing in. You make assumptions based on the weapon you wish you had, not the weapon you're actually holding. In the apocalypse, the most dangerous weapon isn't heavy, weak, fragile, or loud. It's the one chosen with your heart instead of your mind, the one that feeds your ego instead of your survival, the one that convinces you you're stronger than you are, right up until the moment you realize you aren't. In the end, when the world has fallen silent and the dead roam without fear, you finally understand the truth that every survivor must eventually face. The worst weapon isn't defined by its shape, its size, or the material it's made of. It's defined by what it forces you to become. Anything that drags you too close, anything that drains your strength, anything that depends on fuel, finesse, or fantasy, anything that gives you false confidence, false distance, or false hope. These aren't just bad weapons. They're traps waiting for the moment you make one mistake too many. You start to see it clearly once you've survived long enough. Every corpse lying on the ground carries a story. Some died with flimsy knives still stuck between their fingers. Others clutched broken, improvised clubs or firearms with empty magazines. Some were found beside scorched patches of earth, victims of their own flames. And many more died with weapons that promised heroism but delivered exhaustion and vulnerability instead. Their stories all end the same way. Their weapon failed them the moment reality replaced imagination. Standing alone in the quiet ruins, you realize something deeper, something more unsettling. Zombies are predictable, simple. They move forward, they bite, they overwhelm. But humans bury themselves under layers of emotion, ego, and illusion. The real danger has never been the undead. It has always been the choices we make under fear, the hesitations, the assumptions, the belief that survival is about power when it has always been about clarity. You grip your own weapon, not because it looks impressive, but because it works, because it keeps you safe at the distance you need, because it gives you control instead of taking it away. And as the distant groans begin to echo again, as the shapes emerge from the smoke and rubble, you feel something shift inside you. For the first time, you're not thinking about what makes you look strong. You're thinking about what keeps you alive. Your next steps depend on what you choose to believe. Will you cling to the fantasy that any weapon is better than none? Or will you face the truth that the wrong weapon doesn't just kill you? It convinces you that you were safe right up until your final breath. If you want to know which weapons actually keep you alive, you're going to need to see the next part. So stay close, stay smart, and make sure you subscribe, because the dead aren't slowing down, and neither should you.